Golly, we've gotten through so much of the digestive tract, haven't we? Oh, we've talked about the different job that the mouth plays, the esophagus, what does it do? The stomach, the small intestine. The small intestine, almost everything that your body is going to be able to absorb in terms of nutrients from the food that you ate, almost all of it is absorbed, not just in the small intestine, but by the time whatever you ate has passed through the jejunum, that second part of the small intestine. And now we've gotten down here and we're down at the very end of the small intestine. In this particular image, there's no liver, there are no kidneys, there's no stomach, there's no small intestine. They just left in this little tiny bit of the last part of the ileum, and they are focusing on the colon and the rectum. So here you can see the very last part of the small intestine. And it's weird, it just kind of pops into the side here of the large intestine, also known as the colon. So this is the ileocecal valve. It's called the ileocecal valve because this part of the large intestine is called the cecum, C-E-C-U-M, the cecum. Hanging off the cecum is the appendix. Keep in mind that on our lab models, the appendix does not look like that. First of all, I think it's kind of like a purpley gray color, everything. And that appendix is kind of tucked up and is sitting alongside the cecum more than it is here. But this is our large intestine. So what does a large intestine do for us? Well, you're really not getting much in the way of digestion of foods here. No, the digestion, that was happening in the stomach and in the small intestine. Most of the absorption has happened already as well. Well, so what is this here for? Well, your colon is mostly a big container of bacteria that we are deliberately feeding and growing. Why? Well, it turns out that most of what we need, we can get directly out of the food that we eat. But there are some things that are not very abundant in the food that we eat. And there are some things in our food that the human body does not have an enzyme that can break it apart into absorbable molecules. So we keep all of these bacteria around kind of the way a rancher would keep a whole bunch of chickens around, right? You feed the chickens stuff that you couldn't eat anyway, and then they make eggs for you. So we feed the stuff that we cannot digest ourselves. It is going to end up going here into this thing called the large intestine. And here in the large intestine, the bacteria will use it and they'll grow and they will share a little bit of what they get from that food. They'll share it with us. So because of our colon, we can get a little bit of nutrition from the carbohydrates that we're unable to digest ourselves. Because of the bacteria here in the colon, we get some vitamins like vitamin K and some B vitamins that we could not make ourselves. But mostly we're just culturing bacteria here. And these cultured bacteria, they influence our immune system and our overall health in ways that we still don't understand. But I'm going to imagine that during your lifetime, we're going to learn a whole bunch about how the bacteria that live inside of our colon are interacting with us. So we've got this first part called the cecum. This structure called the appendix comes off of the cecum. Very often you'll hear people say, oh, the appendix, it's going away. It's vestigial. Probably not. Actually, we think that the appendix and the cecum together, that they are important for the normal maturation of the human immune system. We've got the ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon. What are these bands? These bands are bands of smooth muscle that are called the taenia coli. And the taenia coli, they are constantly like a little bit tightened up. And because these bands on either side are a little bit tight, it causes a puckering of the rest of the intestinal tract. Those puckered pouches, each one is called a haustrum. Together they are the haustra. And we're basically growing bacteria here, and we grow several pounds of bacteria every day and get rid of most of it, right? And then the rectum, that holds the feces before you're ready to get rid of it, right? So the major function of the large intestine is a big bacterial culture. About 30% of the volumes of every feces you have, every poop you have, about 30% of that is bacteria that you grew. We feed them particularly carbohydrates and proteins that we cannot digest ourselves. And the carbohydrates that we cannot digest ourselves are usually called fiber. If you look at a label of food, it'll say how much fiber is in the food. People usually think, oh, fiber is good for you because it'll make sure you have regular bowel movements. It's probably much more than that. It probably is that the fiber that we feed to these bacteria can encourage the growth of good bacteria that make little molecules that go in our body and make us healthier. Some B vitamins and vitamin K are also made by these bacteria. It does finish absorbing the water from the food we digested and wadding it all up to make it something we can get rid of through defecation. Just a little bit about nutrition. There are like 3 or 4 questions on your final exam about nutrition. Let's just talk about total cholesterol. It is desirable to keep your total cholesterol levels at less than 200 milligrams per deciliter. Less than 200, that number may change during your lifespan. It keeps going down. Yeah, they keep making the limit a little bit lower. Most of the cholesterol that's in your bloodstream is made by your body. And we think those bacteria that live in your colon influence how much cholesterol your body makes. That's interesting, right? Now, if your cholesterol levels are too high, what are you going to do about it? Well, there are different things you could do, but let's get down to brass tacks. The strongest way that you can lower your cholesterol is by having a diet that's low in saturated fat. If you don't remember saturated fat, go back to those original biomolecule lectures. When fats are saturated, every carbon has as many hydrogens as they can possibly have. The saturated fat, particularly that's in animal products, like the saturated fat in a steak or in some milk, that saturated fat we know can elevate our cholesterol levels. We also know one other thing about the fat that we eat. We know that these fats called trans fats, that they're always bad for you. And so there's never a reason to eat trans fats. By the way, yummy, delicious, fresh butter actually doesn't have any trans fats in it. Yucky margarine that you don't even like as much may have trans fats in it. So you really should avoid trans fats. We know that they are bad for your artery health and for your heart health. Now, these other things that will also help lower your cholesterol, a diet that's low in cholesterol, a little bit. Vigorous exercise, that'll lower your cholesterol a little bit, but mostly it'll raise the levels of good cholesterol. We'll talk about that in a second. And then adding water-soluble fiber to your diet, water-soluble fiber, that'll lower your cholesterol. You may have seen that Cheerios advertises itself as being heart healthy. Why? Because oats that are in oatmeal or in Cheerios is high in water-soluble fiber, and that does lower your bad cholesterol levels. So that is true, okay? So if your cholesterol levels are at 250, oh my gosh, that's way too high. If you go for a diet low in saturated fat and you really do a good job, you could lower your blood cholesterol levels by 20% if you do a great job. And now it's down to 200. A diet low in cholesterol, maybe down a little bit more. Hey, add some oatmeal, some apples. How about beans? Even refried beans. As long as they're low in saturated fat, that can be good for you, right? I want to make another point. If your blood cholesterol levels are high and you can't get them down with your diet, There are very good medications that will lower your blood cholesterol levels and have been shown to decrease your risk of heart attack. So if you can't do it yourself, or you just don't want to, there are very good medications to get your blood cholesterol levels in the healthy range and protect your heart. Not just protect your heart, but the arteries to your brain, the arteries to a man's, okay? Let's talk a little more about cholesterol. Cholesterol gets discussed as if there's good cholesterol and there's bad cholesterol. Actually, the molecule cholesterol, it is just cholesterol. However, cholesterol, it's a lipid, right? So when it's in your bloodstream, it's not floating around by itself. Cholesterol is inside little protein packages. So the cholesterol is all the same cholesterol, but the good cholesterol is HDLs, sorry, laser pointer, HDLs, high density lipoproteins. That's the good cholesterol. And that's just a package that doesn't have very much cholesterol in it and has a lot of protein around the outside. See, 50% protein. Okay, that's high density cholesterol. And then there's cholesterol that's in the form of bad cholesterol. Again, the cholesterol is the stuff that's inside the package. All of that is the same. But these guys, the LDLs, those are the bad cholesterol. Here's how I remember it. The H in HDL, I think of it as happy. And the first L in LDL, I think of it as lousy. Okay? So LDLs are the bad cholesterol. It's lousy. And the HDLs are good cholesterol. They're happy. As a matter of fact, if your doctor said, oh my gosh, I've never seen anyone with HDL levels this high, you might be worried, but you shouldn't be, because right now, we don't think it's possible for you to have HDL levels that are too high. They're really good. So what's the deal with the good and the bad cholesterol? What's the deal with those two? Well, the bad cholesterol is trying to give away cholesterol. That's what these LDLs are trying to do. They're going around to all the different cells of the body and going, hey, you want some cholesterol? You want some cholesterol? Okay. What are the HDLs doing? The HDLs are cleaning up the cholesterol that got dropped off somewhere. So if you had too many people handing out cholesterol, okay, then pretty soon it would be like people handing out flyers on campus, right? At a certain point, there's so many people handing out flyers and no one really wants the flyers, and you're just taking them and they end up littering the campus, right? They're in trash cans, they're on benches, they're on tables, they're on the ground, right? That would be like too many LDLs, and you just end up with a mess, and the cholesterol gets put in places that damages your arteries. But the HDLs, they're like little Roomba kind of robot vacuum cleaners. They're busy picking up all the cholesterol. The HDLs drop it off. The LDLs drop it off. The HDLs pick it up. And that's why we don't think you can have HDL levels that are too high, because they're busy cleaning up after the LDLs. There's just this much more to go. I'm going to make this actually just a really long video so that we can finish this. All right. Let's just talk a little bit about sugary beverages. You and I both know that obesity is epidemic, not just in the United States, but pretty much around the world, right? And we don't know all of the reasons why. We do have strong reason to believe that sugary beverages, I'm picking on Coca-Cola here, but sugary beverages in general could be lemonade, could be sweet tea, could be Gatorade, could be, what are those monster drinks or whatever? Could be any of that stuff, right? Okay. Sugary beverages are a part of the problem. So let's talk about how that would affect it. I'm going to start a hypothetical. You and you've got an identical twin. Right now, you weigh exactly the same. And for the next year, you are going to exercise exactly the same, and you're going to eat exactly the same everything for a whole year. And the only thing that's going to be different is your twin is going to have one 12-ounce Coke a day. One. Okay. First of all, no one ever has one 12-ounce Coke a day, I don't think. Okay. So at the end of the year, you weigh the same as you did at the beginning of the year, but your twin gained weight. How much weight did your twin gain? All right. 140 calories in a can of Coke. That's hardly anything, right? 365 days in a year, that many calories, almost 15 pounds. Crazy, right? Crazy. Now, for that year that your twin got the extra can of Coke, was your twin like, woohoo, I got an extra can of Coke? No, they don't even feel like they were eating anymore, but they gained 15 pounds. Now, I told you no one drinks just one, right? What if your twin drank one super big gulp of Coke a day? Not a double gulp, a super big gulp, right? That would be almost 50 pounds. Almost 50 pounds. Now, one of the reasons that it is so easy to gain weight when you drink sugared beverages is that your body is not, it did not evolve to be able to measure the number of calories that are coming in. Your duodenum does measure when you've eaten something. And that's why it takes about 15, 20 minutes before you'll notice that you've eaten. But if you're drinking a Coke and that sugared Coke goes into the duodenum, your duodenum doesn't notice, doesn't care, does not inform your brain. Sugared beverages only get processed like water. Your brain does not recognize it. Let's just imagine this. Let's just imagine that you are super hungry, okay? And so right here, I have got a super big gulp of Coke, which is about, I don't know, 500 and something calories. That's a lot of calories, okay? And then over here, I have got a small hamburger from McDonald's, not a Big Mac or anything, just a small hamburger and some small order of French fries, okay? And you are super hungry, and I'm going to give you your choice. Do you want the super big gulp, or do you want the burger and fries? Yeah, everyone's going to pick the burger and fries. But what if I told you, wait a minute, that burger and fries, they're only 350 calories, and that big gulp, that's 500 calories. So that will fill you up more, right? Yeah, you're not falling for it. Why? Because you know it doesn't fill you up. There's never anyone that gets offered an ice cold Coke and goes, no, 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 I'm too full, because you don't process it as fullness. By the way, if you've got any family members that do drink a super big gulp of Coke a day, if they gain less than 50 pounds a year, they are eating a lot less than you are. It's not their imagination, right? So maybe think about drinking more water and no sugary beverages at all, or keep it down to a minimum. All right, I think that's it for the digestive tract. I will see you at the urinary system.